Hello and welcome to the Armenian News Network Grung. I'm Asbet Bedrosyan. In this Conversations on Grung episode, Hovik Manucharyan and I will be talking about the Armenian economy, its post-war performance, and future outlook. We're recording this episode on Friday, November 19, 2021.
The war initiated in the fall of 2020 by Azerbaijan amid a global pandemic further complicated an already complex economic situation in Armenia. And as the world economy recovers from COVID-19 related shocks, we wanted to understand Armenia's own post-war and post-COVID-19 economic situation. Now, it's not an easy task to separate the wheat from the chaff of economic analysis given the highly polarized post-war Armenia, where many things in life are viewed through the lens of political affiliation. But we'll attempt to do just that with our guest. And to talk about the state of the Armenian economy, we have a special guest today, Mr. Vardan Aramyan, who is the former Minister of Finance of the Republic of Armenia from 2016 to 2018. He is currently the Senior Vice President for Finance and Economy at Vallex Group in Yerevan. Hello and welcome to our podcast, Mr. Aramyan. We're very happy to have you.
Hello, Mr. Aramyan.
My pleasure. My total pleasure, gentlemen.
Mr. Aramyan, indeed, objective expert-level analysis on economy finance in Armenia, especially in the English language, is very hard to come by. So we appreciate having you here, and we're going to try to take all the time we can today from you to answer our questions. So let's begin with the budget, please. The 2022 budget is going through its stages in the parliament. We are hearing a lot of impressive goals in the budget. 7% economic growth, sharp increase in expenses, sharp increase in income. And the budget even foresees a 0.7% decline in the debt to GDP ratio. Government representatives claim that this budget is a testament to Armenia's strong economic recovery. Meanwhile, the Central Bank of Armenia just yesterday called the budget proposal quite ambitious. We're wondering if that's a code word for unachievable. And we wanted to understand your overall assessment of the 2022 budget. And is it realistic in your opinion?
Okay, thank you very much again for the invitation. And to make a judgment on the budget, first of all, we need to slightly elaborate and discuss what are the macroeconomic performance and the basis for the macroeconomic growth for the country. You correctly mentioned, that in all around the world there was a recovery, and by the way, it's a strong recovery. I do believe that this kind of V-shaped growth in many countries are quite impressive. And in Armenia, the good news is that for 9 months, we have around 4.4% economic growth. Actually, it's a leading indicator for the economic growth. It's an indicator of economic activity, but very close to the economic growth. But the bad news is that we need to do, in order to make a judgment whether this is high or low and impressive or not, we need to do a comparison with other countries, plus comparison with figures for a previous year. I want to remind everybody that last year our economic downturn was around 7.4%. And currently a recovery of 4.4% or 5% is not enough in order to fully have the same level for a pre-crisis level of the GDP.
Just to be clear, the Minister of Economy said that essentially the Armenian economy has recovered from the COVID and the war. Does that mean that you don't agree with that assessment?
Absolutely. The pace of the recovery is slow. And there are two aspects, the structure and the pace, to what extent and how fast our economy is recovering from the downturn. And again, in order to make a judgment, we need to look at what is going on in the global world, how many countries are performing. For instance, in a neighboring country, in Georgia, they have a downturn, decline in the economy around 6.2%, and now they have quite impressive recovery, more than 10% in real terms. It highlights, also the aspect that how effective were government for the year 2020 in order to withstand and to enter into the economy in order to absorb this shock that comes from these lockdowns and coronavirus. Going to the on a micro level, of course, it's difficult to make a judgment, but on a macro level, already it indicates that there were some kind of shortcomings. And why I am telling this? Because I am slightly coming to the planned figure for the economic growth for the future, because I fully share the position of the central bank. Budget is not about the figure. Budget is about your fiscal policy. Budget is about your messages to the economy. Budget is that how effectively you want to anchor the expectation of the businesses, which are the key players for generating economic growth. And the important aspect here is that government must pay attention to the credibility, and the credibility comes from what you say, what kind of messages you deliver, and how you make a performance. If there is a big gap between your messages and the actual numbers, of course, it harms your credibility. And in the end of the day, it has some kind of feedback effect on your economy and to the expectation of the economic activity, because it creates a mistrust toward the government and how effective they are going to deliver what they promise. Now, as I mentioned, the recovery is not so strong. There is also the second aspect that we need to be careful with, is the structure of the economic growth. If you look to the structure of economic growth, the leading sector is a non-tradable sector compared to the tradable sector. With the figures, we can just deliver the figures. 4.4% economic growth, out of which the industry growth is around to zero. There is a negative growth on the agriculture, and compared to this, construction and mostly residential house construction is growing with a higher pace, including also services. It just demonstrates that something is wrong with the economic structure, and the government must pay a strong attention to the economic structure of the Armenian economy as well. And why I am saying that? Because I have slightly some concerns that the story is repeating. The story is repeating compared to the booming phase that global world experienced from 2000 to 2009. You will remember when there was a dot-com crisis, and after that, Federal Reserve aggressively reacted with just dampening the interest rates. A lot of liquidity flowed into the economy, and then financial markets used all this kind of dollar terms liquidity, and then there was some kind of spillover effect. But what it have effect on the developing world, it comes from different channels and create a demand pool economic growth, mainly that the non-tradable sector began to blossom, began to exert the stored resources from a tradable sector. I do believe that such kind of situation is repeating, because if you look even the structure of economy and the recovery for this year and before the crisis year, mostly consumption is leading in our economic structure. That's very dangerous, and government must take a serious action in order to support the tradable sector.
Mr. Aramyan, so the structure of the economic growth for Armenia, does it mirror the worldwide growth, or do you think that phenomenon is local to Armenia?
There are two stages of this, and we need to divide this kind of the economic development after 2018 and after the crisis. After 2018, what happens? Armenia is not the first and the last country where this kind of change of the power and ruling exists, and there is experience of many countries when such kind of change of the power ruling or the government system exists. Usually it creates biased expectation within the society, because society member, they think that, okay, there is a new party, there is a new government, without paying attention to their productivity, their skills, their knowledge. They think that tomorrow they are going to live better. And based on this biased expectation, they upfront their consumption. Now you can ask, the consumption, it needs the finances. From where these finances comes? Finances came from a banking credit. And if you look to the credit, how credit performed since 2018, consumer consumption credit again skyrocketed, around 40% increase on annual basis. After the crisis, it comes, I'm explaining something that is generic to Armenia. But after the crisis, along with this kind of phenomena, there is also the story linked to the global development, because we need to bear in mind that global players, US, EU, where their currency is considered as a world currency, and many assets are priced in dollars. The US government, only through the channel of a fiscal channel, they just inserted in liquidity around $1.8 trillion. And through different channels, this liquidity can appear some way, it cannot go to the moon. And for the high prices of commodity prices, including metal prices that have an effect on the terms of trade, or a transfers, remittances, currently we have more than 50% increase year on year in remittances. Through these channels, it comes to Armenia. And again, it fuels consumption. My humble recommendation in this matter, we need to be careful, and we need to do a policy when we have to tax consumption and do a lot of endeavors in order to support the tradable sector, including capital expenditure. Now, this is a part on the budget, and if you do not have a question on the economic structure, I will turn to the budget. Yes. Because budget, the budget, from a first glance on a macro level, the structure of the budget is quite good. And maybe you are familiar with the fiscal rules which have been introduced when I was Minister of Finance. It was the year 2017 and 18. And the essence and the philosophy behind these fiscal rules is that no matter who is going to be in the position of governing or ruling, the fiscal policy must always be prudent and wise, based on some kind of rule. This is the essence and philosophy of the rules. And I'm happy that after violating this rule, which is a normal, many countries violate it. They have a lot of types of fiscal rules in Chile, in the EU, in other countries. They are obliged to violate their rules and have a higher deficit that fiscal rules are taking. But after a year, all these countries take a major step and a strong, bold action in order to do a consolidation and to do return to the fiscal rules. Such a kind of action also we do. And our government presented the budget to the parliament, which are in line with the fiscal rules. However, fiscal rules, it says, for instance, if you have a problem with the debt, and there is you are obliged to do some kind of expansionary fiscal policy, and within 1 year you tolerate that your debt are going to violate the threshold 60% or 50%. For upcoming years, you need to plan and execute such kind of policy in order to gradually to bring this debt to GDP ratio in the safe bands, below 60% or below 50%. This is the logic of the fiscal rule. However, there is a problem, as I said, with the basis of this budget, because if you are going to be wrong in terms of the economic performance, and economic growth is going to be lower for the current year and the lower for the upcoming year, then it means that something must be happen in the budget.
Right. For example, what happens if the growth is only 3%?
Right. That's a very fair question. As I said, within the budget, government plan 6.5% for this year. I'm skeptic to reach this target for this year. Perhaps we will hit the target 5%, 5.2%, which means with the base effect, we are going to have a problem for the next year. And as Asbet clearly mentioned, for the next year, I do not anticipate that economic growth based on the external factors, as I said, because of the global developments. I don't think that it will be more than 5% or 4 to 5% is something that we can think for a best case. And again, we need to think about that our economic potential based on different estimates is around 3 to 4%, right? So already 5% is above your potential. And permanently, if you want to achieve this target, it means that you need to embark to the deep and comprehensive reform. You need to be very aggressive in terms of the restructuring. Some kind of actions must be in order to attract and capture force stability pillars, etc., etc. You know, that's why if we consider that economic growth is going to be lower, then we need to look at the structure of the expenses. Current expenditures still are growing, and if you follow to my debates, to my statements in 2019, I warned the government not to rush and incur new obligation or account expenditure because it's very dangerous. Once you accept or you bear this responsibility or you bear this obligation to increase pensions tomorrow, it will be very, very difficult. You cannot come and say, dear pensioners, I have to cut down your pensions because my economy do not generate enough cash for doing. And it's a not fair approach toward our citizens because citizens, they are not so professional. You as a professional must do your best in order to be honest with the society. And popular is very dangerous here. Here you need to deliver right measures, say, we need to be sure that the economic structure and the economic fundamentals can generate 6 to 7% economic growth. And after that, I can promise that I can increase your pensions. Good news is that in the current budget, government do not increase pensions or salaries, but they did it in 2019, in 2018.
The IMF and World Bank initially predicted Armenia's economic growth to be 1.1% and 3.1% respectively. What accounted for that underestimation? Because when they adjusted this estimation, again, this was used as a propaganda tool, saying, "See, Armenia's economy is doing so great that the IMF increased I think now it's at 5 or 6%, I believe. They adjusted Armenia's growth expectations to 6%. So why do you think the IMF underestimated? Is this global effect or local? And I think you already said that you anticipate the growth to be, I think, around 4 to 5. But can you give us a little bit more specifics on that?
My first message is that whenever I'm saying that we need to be careful with delivering the message, neither we need to deliver conservative, more too much optimistic messages to the society and economic agents. IMF, and I was also anticipating that in the early stage, it was the end of the year 2020, that economic growth for the year 2021 is going to be around 2%. Central Bank also had such kind of expectation. IMF, as you correctly mentioned, had such kind of expectation. What were the factors contributing to this expectation? The first factor was the performance and the action of the government, anti-crisis measures. And I want to stop here because it's very important how you are reacting to the crisis. I'm bringing the example when how fast this kind of shock intervenes in your market, so fast you need to react.
When you're talking about crisis, are you talking about the COVID crisis, the war crisis?
COVID crisis, because this kind of armed conflict, the war had a lagged effect on our economy. Because these kind of war actions took place on the territory of Artsakh rather than Armenia. And the first channel that have a negative effect. First of all, it had a negative effect on the economy of Artsakh, and then through the lagged effect, it transformed to Armenia. But let it alone, because in the first stage, there was a shock coming from the outside. Many countries, including Armenia, we did a lockdown. And during this lockdown, the most important thing to quickly act and try to protect economic potential. And what is the economic potential? It's your businesses, right? Because these businesses, they run out of cash during this time. You will look to the experience and performance of many businesses and many countries. In the first stage, you cannot find any business or even a country that immediately they become insolvent. First of all, they become illiquid. There was a problem with the liquidity. And after that, when they couldn't address their liquidity issue, they become insolvent. That's why the first recommendation during the crisis management philosophy, it dictates that you need to act fast and you need to inject a lot of liquidity. It looks like that there is a pool and the level of the water goes down dramatically. And then fish they cannot breathe. The first thing what you need to do, you need to restore the level of this water, rather than to select which fish have a potential of growth and can have life, and then give a water to this. Because unless how fast you will address this, you are going to have some kind of effect. Many fish are going to die. And this is exactly what government did, and we warned government. In the early stage, government injected liquidity through the credit channel. Remember in 2020, it was a March, it was April, even many professionals, including Vallex and other professionals, they also recommend to act fast and, for instance, to touch the tool of tax deferrals, deferral of the profit tax. They didn't do that. And then ultimately, after 2 months and 3 months, they think, oh, maybe we can do that. And the message that the head of the government, the prime minister, delivered, they say, we never are going to touch this instrument. What was the effect of all of this? We lose a lot of economic potential. And the factors currently we see. That's why, coming back to these kind of expectations, IMF, central bank, many economic professionals, they anticipate that economic growth is going to be, recovery not so strong. When they change the projections, mostly it is due to the factor of the global recovery, because global recovery was stronger than was anticipated during the October, November last year. Even IMF and World Bank, they adjusted their figures for a global growth, for a developing world quite dramatically. And all of these intervenes in our country as well. And as I said, mostly if you look to the structure of economy, from where we have 4.4% economic growth.
That's actually my question that I want to ask right now. So looking forward to the 22 budget, what would be some of the major components driving the economic growth?
Government anticipates that mostly it is going to be a tradable sector, around 8% increase in the industry. For this year, they anticipate for industry around 4%. For agriculture, they also anticipate that the economic growth is going to be around 5%. And other sectors like construction and services are also going to behave well, but comparatively with a lower economic growth compared to the industry.
Interesting.
My anticipation is that the mistake is toward this economic, the structure of the economic growth as well, because currently we have industry growth around 0.7%, as I said. Mm-hmm. And if you look which branch of the industry is leading, it's mostly mining sector, right, and it's due to the international high prices of the metal. That's why for the upcoming year, we need to consider what are the drivers for the high economic growth, for the high growth in the industry sector. I do not see big major factors that are going have effect and to contribute to 8% growth in the industry sector. Because if you look to the investment also for this year, investments are very weak. And if you look to the structure of the investment, to in what sector this investment goes, again, we do not have a big investment in industry sector and in the agriculture sector. If you look to the credit performance, again, we have a cut down in the growth rate of the credit that goes to the industry sector, around 5 to 6% for 9 months. So these are the factors that create a skepticism that the structure of the economic growth is not going to be.
And I think that there's a large factor based on the mining sector. Personally, I don't know exactly if the expectations on the mining sector are based on these current extremely inflated prices for copper, aluminum, and things like that. And if they do not remain at the same levels, they're basically on a very high level right now. They could come down at more normal levels once the global supply chain starts settling down. And I'm really concerned that if we've based some of our expectations on very high current prices, then that sector may not perform as well. And
absolutely, that's true. Your anticipation is in parallel. We need to think about also a lot of liquidity that is all around the world have been uploaded, and this also create a pressure toward the prices. And perhaps many companies like Goldman Sachs, McKinsey, they anticipate that prices possibly can be adjusted downward, but not in a big margin, and will be around 8,500 to 9,000. Mm-hmm. But there's another story, which gives me opportunity to share your view. That's why the government must be also careful with this. Recently, government introduced one tool, export tariff, for the export of the concentrate for the molybdenum and copper. Right. Of course, with our researchers, they prepared one paper, and we sent it to the Prime Minister's office and the government, arguing that these actions are going to harm mining sector as well, and in the long run, it is going to have an effect of a cut down of a net worth of the society and cut down of net present value of the taxes. Why it is so? Because government failed to pay attention also to the cost factors of the mining companies. It's not only prices have been increased, other cost factors also have been increased. Gasoline price, transportation have tripled, some kind of the inflation also in spare parts of different equipment also increased and dramatically increased. So you should not ignore this part and say, okay, come on, there's $9,000 per ton of the copper. Let's insert this draconian export tariff. Moreover, we also urge government that there is no such experience in all around the world. When you introduce export control, in order to generate extra cash, usually countries, the experience of many countries shows that such kind of tool, trade tool, government touch and government utilize in order to have economic some kind of changes. Usually they want to protect their local producers. They use this concentrate in order to produce copper, and then they want to, like in China, for instance. In China, there is an export tariff for refined copper. And why it is so? Because they have a lot of factories that produce tubes and other finished products, right? In Armenia, we do not have such. This is going to have an effect on the companies, and probably there is a high possibility.
That's right. We're highly reliant on raw materials rather than
absolutely. And many mining companies, there is a high risk that they can appear in a bankruptcy situation. Why? because they ignore the situation that there are some kind of criteria and some kind of factors which is very, very much keen to the mining sector. For instance, high level of a debt and the leverage for the mining companies, some kind of limitation of the life of the mines, because you cannot forever you extract copper or the constant. There's a limitation on the life of the mine, or
what would you recommend the Armenian government do instead of this tariff in the way that they did it? What would be an alternative?
There are many factors, but always I draw attention of the government in the most important part. It's a predictability of their actions. They need to be very cautious while delivering messages and then changing their behavior. Is very dangerous. They need to enhance communication and cooperation with the real sector, with the businesses. Changing rule of the games very quickly and fastly is very dangerous. And again, here always I bring an example of this kind of tool on personal income tax return, when citizen can purchase an apartment from a constructor, and then in interest rates can be accrued. Interest payments can be accrued to the personal income tax. This kind of tool, in the very beginning, government said it's very good tool. We are going to keep it forever. And after 2 years, they realized that it's a wrong tool. And those specialists that urge them that to review and reconsider that tool, suddenly they get up early morning and they say we are going to change the rule of the games. It's problematic. Again, I'm in favor of changing and reviewing this tool, but the point that I'm trying to make, you should be very careful. Whenever you are creating this rule, I'm going to follow this rule. And after some period of time, you change your behavior, is very dangerous. Similarly, as I said, similar behavior they demonstrate when they introduce this export tariff. Suddenly, many companies, they realize that there is a decision, not that they are going to, that they are going to introduce this export tariff. This is my major recommendation. We can go on, continue with different actions, what they need to do in a micro level, but the most important thing is what they need to pay attention.
How much of this growth factors in the inflation that we're seeing currently?
I will put the question in another way, because usually inflation. There's some level of the inflation that usually central bankers and central bank target in order not to impede economic growth. That's why we need to look at not at the current price level, but for the future, whether these kind of inflationary expectations are well anchored, and we are going to return to the 4 level, the level of the 4%. Currently, inflation is quite high. It's around 9% on a 12-month. But all specialists, including central banks, and there is also philosophy behind the monetary economy when there is a supply side inflation, and this inflation we import it from the outside. It comes from the outside mostly, as I said, because the overexpansionary performance of the many countries, it end up some kind of loss of total factor productivities in different countries. It end up with a high inflation in all around the world, including in US. We have around 5 to 6% inflation in US, in EU and other countries, and these have been imported to Armenia. Problem is not with the current inflation. Problem is for the future inflation. And there are a lot of researchers in academics, and if this inflation, high inflation, is going to capture, and then inflationary expectations will be fueled by different actions, we are going to have a problem with the economic growth and loss of economic potential. That's why your question, I will put on the assessment of whether there is a risk that such kind of high inflation will harm economic growth for the future year, for 2022. And there is a risk, I will explain, because here central bank is doing whatever they have to do. Mm-hmm. They increase the interest rate by 300 basis points, right. Around 3 percentage points, My understanding is the following. Because in a 3% increase in the interest rate, it is going to have an effect also in the investment and crowd out some kind of investment, because currently we have another problem. Government for the year 2020, he managed to absorb liquidity from the market through the issuance of the bonds in the local markets, around 300 billion drams. It's around $600 to $700 million. Mm-hmm. For this year, their plan is around 200 billion drams, around $450 million, right? And for the upcoming year, they plan to absorb additional liquidity from the market, from a local market, around $500 million. That's a very digit alongside. If you look to the that interest rates are also increasing, it is going to have a crowd out effect on the economy. This first channel. The second channel, if inflation is going to remain in the upper level and central bank will fail to anchor inflationary expectation because government do not support central bank to do its role. I want to draw your attention in this important aspect. Usually, when there is a shock in your economy and which creates inflation, it's not only the task of the central bank. Of course, price stability is a task of the central bank, but government must also support central bank effectively to absorb the shocks that are intervening in your market. Now there is a story linked to the government performance and their activity. To what extent government supports to the central bank? Let me bring you one example. Central bank is increasing interest rate. The only tool that central bank has under its disposal in order to anchor the experience is interest rate, right? But the government currently in different channels, he has a some kind of shortcomings in his performance. For instance, they never deliver message and explain the society and citizens why the prices of gasoline are increasing and increasing in such a space, because we compared to the previous year, we have 60% increase of the gasoline price. Now, me right. as a citizen, what is my behavior? I'm looking what is going on in the market. Central bank have no mandate in order to explain situation in the particular commodity markets. But this create expectation, because if I do not get a message from the government, whether this is subjective or objective, whether there are some kind of the aspects that contribute to this increase, what I'm going to do? I'm going to look to the back, that what is the performance of the price of the gasoline. And then I'm going to protect myself. And the rational behavior will be to go and purchase more than I need for today to consume the dollar. And I'm going to come up from the consumption. But the point that I'm trying to make, is it has no effect on how much it has increased. It's the most important is the inflationary expectation. And when government fails to deliver correct messages, to demonstrate and to explain to society that, in a particular commodity market, that society, each individual is very sensitive from that particular commodity market. Price increase is objective. They are going to have controls over these consumer markets and the separate markets of the separate commodities. It will create some kind of inflationary expectation. For instance, about the potato, right? Everybody are talking about the potato. What I'm going to do, if I look what is going on in the market, increase, I'm going to purchase now is the winter, I'm going to purchase more than I need potato and reserve.
Possibly causing shortages.
Right. When government is delivering some kind of scattered information, just a very short or not full-fledged information, because he has to continue delivering, explaining 100 times, 200 times, continuing. These are, fight. These are the war, the economic war, and it's not only the war for the central bank. Government and central bank must be very proactive in terms. They need to enhance their coordination. They need to work together. If government do not do what he has to do, then the anchoring inflation expectation is going to be very costly for the economy. Because as I said, now what central bank is doing? Central bank had only one tool to anchor this expectation: increase the interest rate. Whether it is going to be costly for the economy? Yes, as I said, it's going to be costly. Why? Because government put a plan for the upcoming year, absorb extra liquidity around $500 million. It means that the banks, just feeling some kind of risk in the market, they will begin prone to give this liquidity to the government rather than to inject into the economy. Because the interest rate, government bonds interest rate are going to react to the interest rate of the central bank. Again, the point that I'm trying to make, Hovik, is that government must be very aggressive to explain public and to deliver the messages what they need, what they are anticipating, expecting. And effective is that government and that country where there is a high level and very effective coordination between the actions of the government and the central bank. We should not allow alone central bank in this big fight.
And lastly, it concerns me when we hear some news from the government that salaries have been increased for some segments of the workforce, but is this inflation going to wipe that out? And do we have any figures, or do you have any projections on how the inflation that we have currently and the inflation we anticipate next year, how it will affect income inequality and poverty in Armenia, for instance, and in general, socioeconomic effects of that inflation?
Just delivering the information on the salary increase on annual basis, we have a salary increase around 5 to 6% since 2018. The wrong thing that government did previously, because it was a populistic, when they just dramatically increased basic salaries, and this can have a negative effect on a cost curve of the legal entity, on the businesses. And that's why we say, even the policy increasing the salaries, you should be very cautious, you should be very careful. First of all, you need to pay attention to the basis of your economic growth, to the economic agent. You need to take care of them, your investors. You need to work with them. You should not leave them alone with the problems, because they create a general economic growth. If they do not create economic growth, only your action in the budget, increasing the salaries, are going to end up with a big problem. Currently, why government cannot, inflation is there, but why government is in a position that have a strong limitation, cannot target this problem. But of course, as you mentioned, it is going to harm socially vulnerable people that have a salary below the average salary, because inflation is going to absorb this kind of purchasing power of the society. And of course, there is also a story linked to the poverty. Of course, poverty rate is going to go up. That's inevitable. And during this kind of show, Hovik, such kind of outcomes are inevitable. Even though you can see that some kind of problems of unemployment, some social problems during the crisis, it happens also in other countries. The issue is not that we are going to have for 1 year increase in the poverty rate or some kind of decrease in real wages. The problem is, so what next? How about next year? How about in the future? What government is doing? And again, I'm coming to the most important thing. Okay, government can, society can survive this year, no matter that high inflation is going to exert, is going to take part of that salary. However, for the next years, government must be careful in order to push the economic capacity in the upper level and to generate higher economic growth.
When you were talking about the vulnerable segment of the society, do we have quantitative data on how the inflation is affecting income inequality, poverty, and such in Armenia?
Currently, we don't have as that because such kind of actual figures, National Statistics Service usually disseminated, published after a year, because they do this kind of publication once a year. For the year 2021, they will publish these figures for in the mid of 2022. But we can guess, what kind of effect it's going to have. Of course, we can confidently say that yes, the poverty rate is going to increase. Some kind of effect on unemployment also is going to take place. How much it is difficult to estimate at this stage.
Understood.
Mr. Aramyan, I wanted to ask you your professional opinion on what the unblocking of transportation and infrastructure links in the South Caucasus would provide to Armenia. Is it going to be qualitative, or can we actually put a quantitative figure to it?
The Prime Minister had specifically said that the unblocking was going to have a qualitative boost to the Armenian economy.
It's a very populistic declaration. Unless you do not demonstrate what the roads are going to be, who is going to, because there is some kind of exchange. Okay, I'm blocking. What does it mean? I do understand that. I do believe it's even with it's obvious that there is a direct connection between Azerbaijan, two territories of Azerbaijan, Nakhichevan and Azerbaijan territory. It's a direct road. And in a transportation, recalling statements of many specialists in the transport sector, the cost of the transport is counting per ton and the distance. If my businesses are going to pass twice bigger distance in order to reach the Russian market compared to the distance that currently they have, there is a big question mark whether it is going to have a big economic effect or not. That's why we should be very cautious unless they didn't demonstrate conditions, roads. It's just a declaration. Currently, we have clarity, and in different aspects already it's obvious what Azerbaijan wants. And there is a clear connection between Azerbaijan, Azer's two territories, and with the territory of Turkey. Instead of doing some kind of a circle passing the territory of Iran, they're going directly to enter to the territory of Turkey. Is it going to have affect economic effect of Azers? Without doubt. Now, let's consider what is going to be the road for our companies, for our businesses. How we can have an exit to the international market. Currently, our main market is a Russian market. Europe, slightly, now we have some kind of export to Iran. For Iran, we don't need a road. For Russia, indeed, we have only one road to go. It's for the last Georgian territory. Now it comes, and major part of our export, it goes to the Russian markets and the Eurasian Economic Union, right? So they need to demonstrate the road, and also the agreement. I'm putting aside the safety as well, because another big major issues, whether it is going to be safe to pass this long road through the Azeris territory, because they are going to pass very small territory, around 100 or something kilometers passing out the territory, while we have to do a big circle in order to reach Russian market. Again, I'm very skeptic on these declarations. There is also another aspect. They should be we should be very careful on this. Whenever we are talking not only this transportation road, but opening all markets, including Turkish markets, and then Turkish businesses can enter easily to Armenian market, right, and our businesses can enter to Turkish market without any impediments and problem. This also we should be consider it twice before doing that. because Turkish economy is quite strong and competitive. Their economy is very diversified. Their businesses are quite strong with a lot of money, a lot of capital, and there's a big danger that they are going to absorb our companies. This is very dangerous. Look what
so-called Batumization, I guess. That Georgia has
absolutely. Look at what is going on in Batumi. And you will see in the future, politics very much dependent from economic interest. Why currently Georgians cannot confront with Turks? Because there is a lot of capital in Georgian market from Turkey and from Azerbaijan. That's why they are very careful with this. Why we cannot so much confront with Russia? Let's put aside the separatism, because there is a lot of investment from Russia in Armenian territory. That's why, investment and capital plays a vital role also for politics as well.
Let's move to the next major thing that we wanted to cover, which is the much touted 2.6 billion aid package from the European Union. I'm sure you've been following the news on that. But for the average person, when they hear 2.6 billion, they say, "Oh wow, it's free money." But we wanted to understand: is there any clarity how much of that 2.6 billion is debt, and how much of it is grants or the actual free money? What are your thoughts in general around this package?
Yet we do not have a clarity on the size of how much is going to be a grant and how much is going to be credit. We need to embark to our previous experience, because this is not the first support that we received from EU. Under different tools, EU already provided a lot of support, including financing support to Armenia. And usually, as a rule of thumb, around 20 to 30% they provide as a grant this money, and the remaining is a credit, and mostly it's a credit and technical assistance. And technical assistance under the tools of tax, twinning, or Sigma, they just send a specialist to your country. Those specialists are paid from this money, and then it's up to you how effectively you are utilizing all of this tool. And the rest, it goes like a credit. But even grant, when EU provides grant to Armenia and also other countries, it's not a free money. They put some kind of conditionality that you need to perform, some criteria, some performance actions, etc. And important aspect here, that government must have enough skill and knowledge in order to effectively negotiate with EU what kind of criteria, what kind of performance indicators or benchmark or actions they are going to do. Usually, experience of many countries shows that when countries, developed countries, they want to dictate, let's say, dictate some kind of rules, they also undermine or ignore some kind of specificities in the countries. Usually I bring the example that, you want a little kid to run 100 meters, and then you wear XXL shirt to this, and they cannot effectively run. You should be very careful. But this is what happens in reality, in the experience of countries shows, when they just try to incorporate provisions, laws, or structure that currently exist in EU, but it is going to harm your economy or your managing system, because you are not ready for that. You should be careful with this. That's why the secret or the important factor behind all of this, how effectively you are going to negotiate with the EU, and how you are going to compile this action plan. In terms of the credit, whether it is going to be, let's say,
preferential or
okay, whether this credit is going to be preferential or not, it's up to, again, you need to, usually they provide preferential, but again, they provide as a budget support. They give them money, and then again, they put some kind of conditional in. In any case, about this support, the point that I'm trying to make is that it's very early to say that okay, we are happy that such kind of funding exists, because we need to have effective negotiation with EU's representative result, in what dimension we are going to use them. If we manage to convince them to use these funds for a southern part of our economy, it will be very good. Because, as I said in different occasions, we need to draw again attention of our citizens and government on the southern part, because risks are there. We need to strengthen infrastructure, do a lot of investment. Because whenever there is a risk, wherever there is, you cannot find any company that will be key to do an investment or do a business. Usually businesses are going to escape.
If all this EU funding were to materialize, and there are, let's say, a couple of $100 million or euros that are being invested in Armenia for the next 10 years or so each year, with so much money pumping into the Armenian economy, can the government really manage inflation, wage growth, wage price spirals, labor shortages, and so on?
Absolutely, and we need to think about whether the budget have enough space in order to absorb all of this, because part of this, as I said, if it is going to come in form of the credit, we need to look at to the space of the budgetary space, whether we have enough space linked to the debt. And as I said, in the upcoming years, government must execute a consolidation rather than do expansionary policy in order to bring into the good shape the debt. There's another aspect. All of this kind of liquidity is difficult currently to say how effectively we are going to manage all of this. We need to consider that such kind of opportunity exists, but how to manage all of this kind of opportunity, how effectively we are going to absorb and utilize these resources, it's a matter of timing, and we will see how government is going to do. My anticipation compared to the previous past 3 years, I'm very skeptic that they can do that effectively. Just judging by their behavior when they are changing all the time their position, they are doing populistic thing rather than undertaking deep and comprehensive structural reforms. And this is very dangerous. This populistic behavior is very dangerous. That's why just answer to the question whether current government is in the situation, in the position effectively to manage all of these resources, I'll be very, let's say, a skeptic in order to make such kind of declaration. Very cautious on this matter.
Mr. Aramyan, just a last question, and wanted to ask if you have been in Artsakh recently and what your impressions are. I know that Vallex group has resources in Artsakh itself.
Actually, yes, I know. Recently, I visited to Artsakh. The overall mood in Artsakh, I will not say that is very favorable, and people are in a very good mood, and everything is understandable because there's a lot of uncertainty for their future life, for their necessity. That's we need to understand. On our business itself, not only our business, but all our businesses in Artsakh, they're also very cautious. And now they are in on hold position. What next is going to be? That's why they are very sensitive on what, in a political level, what kind of negotiations are carrying on. What's the position of Armenia? Unfortunately, we can see, and I'm just judging just by referring the statements of many political researchers and professionals, just judging by them the declaration. Currently, Armenia's position is very weak. Unfortunately, we're weak in these negotiations, and it just testifies that possibly we need to think about whether we need to continue negotiating all of this stuff with the current government or not. Because, we need to bear in mind, I'm not again making a political declaration, but just look at what the experience of many countries are showing. When you have a failure, even in one dimension, usually the government resigns. Because already you demonstrated that you are not in the position, you do not have enough capacity with wide knowledge, etc., in order to manage that risk. Currently, we have a lot of problems in our SAFATIS reason. That's why my anticipation, unless we do not address these issues, the issues of our SAFATI, I think speaking about the effective economic growth, it would be very naive.
All right. Well, we'll leave it there for today. Thank you, Mr. Aramyan, for taking the time to talk to us. We appreciate it greatly.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
That concludes this week's conversation on Grung. We look forward to your feedback, including your suggestions for conversation topics in the future. Contact us on our website at groong.org, that's GROONG, or on our Facebook page, ANN-Groong, or in our Facebook group, Groong-Armenian News Network. Special thanks to Lara Osborne for providing the music for our podcast. I'm Hovik Manucharyan, and on behalf of everyone in this episode, I wish you a good week. Thank you for listening, and talk to you soon.